Welcome everyone to Foundations of Facilitation. My name is Meg Bolger. For those of you who only know me via email, this is what I look like. And for those of you who are frequent flyers to our community events, welcome. So excited to have you. Really cool to see so many fun faces. And I know where a lot of you live. And so that sounds really strange. What I mean to say is that we have folks from all over the world right now, which is really exciting to me. That's much less a weird way to say it. Okay, awesome. So welcome to Foundations of Facilitation. This is a new workshop that we're testing out today, and I'm really excited about it. And we're gonna jump right into it in here in a moment. I'm Meg Bolger of Facilitator Cards. I spend a lot of time training people on how to train people, facilitating on facilitation, like our subject today. And one of my favorite things in the world is to facilitate with people. And so thank you all for being here. One thing I should share about our community events. So all of our community events are free to register. And if you feel compelled to at any point or towards the end of the session, we will provide a way for you to make a contribution to us. And all of the contributions go towards getting under-resourced educators and underserved educators our facilitator cards and our trainings. We partner with an organization called Break Free right now, and they work with teachers who work with incarcerated youth. And so we want to get tools into those wonderful teachers' hands. So any contributions that you make will go towards that. And that's really exciting. And we'll provide a way for you all to do that if you want to. If you're like, this is free, it's free, it's free. But if you want to, it's an option. Okay, wonderful. So we are going to start here with one of my favorite little, this is my favorite thing on virtual, like a favorite 2-minute way to use virtual. So if you've been in my session before, you probably have seen this. If you've never, welcome. We're going to start with peekaboo. Okay, so to play peekaboo, you need your thumb and you need your webcam on. If you do not want to use either of those things, then you don't get to play, but it'll take 2 minutes and then we'll go back to optional camera on, camera off, whatever you want to do. So you all are probably familiar with the game peekaboo. And this is how it works here. What you're going to do is you're going to take your thumb and you're going to place it over your webcam. Okay, if you touch it, it'll get a little smudgy. So just, hover is a good idea. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say a statement. And if that statement applies to you, then you're going to take your thumb off the webcam and kind of peek and see who else this applies to, right? So this really works best on the gallery view. It's no fun if you're just looking at speakers. Okay, so here we go. Thumb over the webcam if you're playing. All right, so take your thumb off the webcam if you enjoy hot sauce on your burritos. Oh, okay, like a little bit of a spicy bunch today. Okay, wonderful. Okay. Take your thumb off the webcam if you were born outside the United States. Hey, all right. Okay, good few of us. Okay, take your thumb off the webcam if you are or have facilitated something this week. All right, that's a lot of people. All right. Okay, take your thumb off the webcam if you have spent more than 5 hours on your computer today. Yes, and you all showed up to spend more time with us. Okay, thank you, everybody. Okay, we got maybe, okay, we got 2 more. Take your thumb off the webcam if you have a deck of facilitator cards. Woohoo! What's up, card carriers? Okay, last question. Take your thumb off the webcam if you have cut your own hair in the last 2 years. Oh, well done, all of you brave souls. Okay, great. That's peekaboo. My partner had to learn how to cut my hair, but I did not do it. So I don't think that counts. But that was more than half of you. So that's pretty great. Okay, awesome. So what we're going to do today is we're really going to be talking about some foundations of facilitation and really generating and exploring those together. So we're going to kind of keep rolling with this idea. To me, peekaboo, one of the things I love about peekaboo is that it like reminds us that we're physical beings, not just like little boxes on the screen, which sometimes like gets a little bit tricky to remember. So we're going to try one more kind of more physically presenced activity. So what you're going to need to do is you're going to still need to be in gallery view. If your camera's on, that's ideal for this activity as well. So that's what we're going to do right after peekaboo. And you want to be able to move. So like, you don't need a lot of space, but if you're sitting, if you want to stand, if you just want to stay sitting, you just want to give yourself a little bit of space to like move. This activity is called strike a pose. So we're just going to be striking poses. And we just want the ability to like do that the most freely we can without getting too far away from our webcams where we can't kind of see everyone. Okay, so I am going to say strike a pose that represents, and then I'm going to say a statement, and I'm going to count down from 3. Many of us are overthinkers, and so we just 3, 2, 1. You want to let your body think more than your brain on this one. First thought, best thought kind of activity. And once you do that, hold your pose, strike your pose, and then give a quick glance at the screen, see what's going on in the other windows. And then I'll give you another prompt. We're going to do, I think we're going to do 4. We're going to do 4 prompts total. So we'll kind of strike a pose, see what's going on, and then I'll give you another prompt and you'll strike a new pose. Cool. Okay. All right. So here we go. Getting ready to strike a pose. So I'm gonna bring my mic a little closer and see if that helps a little. Okay. So strike a pose that represents your favorite genre of music. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, look at the screen. Okay, all right, okay. Got questions on some of them? All right. If you're like, ooh, that was just let your body do something. You know, if you were like, ooh, I couldn't go there, like, we'll see what happens. All right, so here we go. Strike a pose that represents a participant in a bad facilitation. 3, 2, 1. Okay. All right. Okay. Strike a pose that represents a good facilitator. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, all right. Okay, last one. Strike a pose that represents how you want people to feel in your sessions. 3, 2, 1, go. Yes. Okay. All right, great. Okay. Any noticings for like your own responses or from anybody else's responses that people would be up for sharing? If you're up for sharing out loud, maybe hit that raise hand button. If you're up for sharing in the chat, share in the chat. But I would love to see any reactions or responses. Yeah, Phil, go ahead.
I liked how guitars, when you pause, look like violins. So I was looking around the group and like, oh, there's a lot of classical music lovers in this group.
And then you're like, oh, maybe it's like higher, but like lower. Yeah, subtle differences make a difference. Dan, you said so much variety.
Yeah, awesome. I was going to say also like the movement, which you mentioned earlier, Meg. It seems like it's helping my stupid mental health. It feels good.
Okay, just like moving. Just like it kind of feels like you're, you know, like you can get kind of stuck and just like moving breaks something free or can, loosen us back up. Anyone else? Yeah, Carolyn?
On Jason's point, I felt like it created a sense of community like right away. I don't know anyone in this room, but I felt like in that moment we were all really connected, which immediately broke the ice and just like I felt so much closer to everyone, even though I never spoken to anyone before.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, I love that. We hadn't even spoken yet. Yeah, you all hadn't even said anything, and that already happened. Okay. Any other reflections, insights? Jason? You have one? Or are you just unmuted? I might be doing that like, oh, I was just touching my hair. I wasn't actually raising my hand, saying, I like that it was playful, brought some energy and levity. Yes, great, awesome. Thanks, Olivia. Yeah, Chris, go ahead.
I like that it was an invitation for people to express their own personalities.
Yeah. How did you see people's personalities being like expressed rather than like the response to the prompt being expressed?
When the first one was music, and I totally did like rock music, and I saw Hunter was doing the same thing, and so like to me, like there's like I was like, oh, there's my people, like there's somebody that I can relate to. So, and I think also too, if you're kind of a goofier person, you probably also did more goofier type of gestures. So I think it just kind of invited people and it embraced people's personalities, which I liked.
Okay, wonderful, love it. Connecting to your people, seeing personalities come out, awesome. Yeah, okay, so cool. So I also just wanted to get us to like think, you know, explore this topic in a new way, right? We're here, we're going to explore facilitation in a lot of different ways today. And just the idea to me of like, I don't know if anybody's ever asked me to like embody or like try to represent what it is, like physically. And so I just thought that was also just like an interesting way to interact with the question. Cool. I'm so glad that you all had so many different wonderful responses to that. So I wanted to speak really briefly about kind of like when I say facilitation, what do I mean? I know a lot of us on this call are people who identify as facilitators or people who facilitate often from the peekaboo. It was very clear how much a lot of us facilitate. And I just wanted to like kind of clarify when I'm thinking about facilitation, like what am I thinking? So I have a little visual here I want to go through real quick. One, so this is a visual that represents me lecturing, teaching, and facilitating. And in some workshops I do, we go into this much more in depth, but basically what I want to kind of draw your attention to is this idea of, to me, lecturing is a lot of one-way communication, often from like an expert or somebody with a lot of knowledge in the front of the room to a group of people, or just one, you know, all of us have lectured just one person. And then teaching is this kind of bi-directional communication, right? We're showing or demonstrating something, we're getting information back. Did that work? Did it not work? And there's kind of this like now bi-directional flow of information going from the teacher or the educator to the participants. And then facilitation is all about this like multi-directional exchange of information, of emotion, of energy in general, and that a lot of people are learning from each other, not just from you as the like person in the front of the room. And to me, one of the biggest differences between all of these things is this idea of how much agency or control a participant has over the information or over their experience in the session. And then how much active participation do they like really need in order to like make that thing happen. So they don't need to participate in a lecture. You could actually be asleep and the person could still be lecturing to you. But in a facilitation, participation is required. Like people have to participate for you to be able to facilitate. And to me, that idea of like participation is like is a necessary ingredient to facilitation is something that has led me to be like really interested and fascinated by participation. And kind of like, what are the levers we get to pull? What are the like different ways we get to invite people to participate? What kind of unlocks the like true potential of participation? And so those are kind of the questions that I'm going to like frame a lot of our work today around, is what unlocks the full potential of a group? And specifically, like how can we as facilitators really optimize participation? So yeah, so we're going to spend some time digging in there, and that's where we're going to go right now. So the next like two parts of the conversation we're going to have are going to involve us thinking about participation, and we need to kind of contextualize that within one kind of way of facilitating, in person or virtual. We're going to leave the dreaded hybrid aside for the moment. And I'm just going to ask us, what do we want to think about this in the context of virtual or in person? So you now have a poll. I would love you to just And obviously there's a lot that translates between them, virtual and in person, but just to help us kind of locate our minds, let's pick one for the moment. Okay. Okay, so virtual has it. Virtual has it, and that's what we're gonna do. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is I would like, thanks Austin, I appreciate the call out. I would love you to grab something to write on, piece of paper and a pen. You could do it on a Word document, but later we are going to be doing a little bit more of a something that'll work better on an actual piece of paper. So if you have one near you, grab a piece of paper and a pen. If you don't, go ahead and open up a Word document. You can totally do this, this and the next activity on that. Austin, I think the throwdown is super fair about hybrid, and it's just not even a thing we want to get into in this size of facilitation. In an hour, well, we need a whole hour just to debrief all of our stress around it, and then we need a second hour to actually get into it. Okay, all right. So now that you have your piece of paper, I am going to give you 1 minute to answer this question. Here is the question. What are all the different ways that people can participate in a facilitation online? So we're doing virtual. So what are all the different ways people can participate in a virtual facilitation? 1 minute, make as long or varied a list as possible. Okay, another 10 seconds. See if you can stretch for one more. Okay. All right. So we are going to make a group list, and I'm going to do this here like this. This is my digital flip chart. So let's make a list together. So if you can unmute, if you're willing to share one way that you came up with, and we'll kind of do it like Boggle style, where we'll just start with a list and we'll see, see if the earlier you share, the least creative you have to be. The later you share, the more creative you have to be. So anybody up for sharing? We got a couple people unmuted here. Is it Sheena or Shayna?
Sheena.
Sheena?
Yep. So I wrote down facial expressions as a way to participate.
Perfect. Facial expressions. Absolutely. Yep. Thanks, Sheena. How about Jason?
Chat.
Chat. Typing in the chat.
Yep.
Type into the chat. Yes. All right. Hunter.
Asking a question.
Asking a question. Okay. Would you say that's different than just responding out loud? Would you put that as two separate things?
Yeah, so I think, right, it depends, right? So you can think about it verbally or right within the chat.
Okay. Cool. All right. Yes, Phil.
Observation, just watching.
Just watching. Observation. Yep. Okay. Carolyn.
I said,
Oh, there's
sorry.
two of you. Sorry. Brisbane.
No, you're right.
We'll go
You're
Brisbane,
right.
Carolyn, and then the other Carolyn.
I had use of emojis or reactions.
Emojis. Okay. And other Carolyn.
Both of us had the exact same thought. I said
No way.
reactions.
Do you have a different one too that we haven't listed so far?
I just had camera on in general. So yeah.
Okay. I mean, I would also say some people will also have people kind of vote with their cameras on or camera off. So if you're ready to move on, put your camera on, that sort of thing. So that's another way you could use camera on. Yeah. Cool. All right. How about we'll go Lonnie and then Olivia.
Annotate on the screen.
Yeah. Annotate on screen shares or on whiteboards. Yeah.
Yeah.
Olivia.
Yeah, I like was thinking of a person who like engages other people through the facilitation. So someone who's like not just responding to a prompt in the chat, but who's like, so and so has a good input on that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's kind of like you can speak for your own ideas, but you can also say like, you know, Sharon really had a really good idea. I'd love to hear from what she was saying in our breakout room, like those kind of like amplifier people.
Yes,
yeah.
Totally.
Awesome. Kyle, and then Chris.
Okay. What about like the use like collaborative tools or documents, kind of on the side, like a Miro or Google Doc or Jamboard, those kind of things.
Miro, Google Doc. Yeah, I love that you listed both of those together, because we could go into like a huge list of those things, but just using kind of an exterior collaborative tool in general. Yeah. And then Chris, and then Austin.
Everybody said what I had on my list. So the last one I have is engaging with the polls, which I like what you just did. So engagement with actual activities.
Great. Poll responses. Austin, you still got some left? Yep. If you are saying stuff out loud,
here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Like some people, they don't just engage, they guide. Like they got like really good group going, like in groups, like leaders will emerge and they'll kind of they're facilitating for you.
Kind of like mini isn't the right word, but like kind of like on the spot facilitators, or like small group facilitators maybe.
Yeah, this kind of emerge, right? And they kind of lead in a group.
Yeah, kind of impromptu facilitators. Awesome. Okay, anyone have any left that we don't have up here yet? You can put it in the chat or out loud.
I had a few.
I put ignoring as one. Ignoring? Yeah, I take that as a signal, right? Like all the others are signals, but if they're tuned out,
okay.
And I'm okay with that because I do them, I'm a consultant. So if they're tuned out, I'm assuming they don't think they need to be involved in activity. But to me, that's another way that they participate. It's not the best way, but it's not necessarily negative. It's just a signal.
Interesting. Okay, it's not disruptive, but it's not additive either. Yeah, that's really interesting to think of. Any signal is a participation. Oh, that's really challenging. I like that. Okay, we got Dan. You've got a couple we haven't heard from you yet. Go ahead, Dan.
Oh, do we already say like just gesturing?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, just gesturing. We said facial expression specifically, but just the idea of like gesturing more generally, like thumbs up, like thumbs up, it's a gesture. Yeah, for sure. I would also like personally put nodding into the gesture over facial expression sort of thing. You're doing it perfectly right now. Okay, yeah. Anyone else? Kyle, is your hand still up because you got more?
I've got one more.
Okay, one more, go for it.
I'm gonna say building and showing stuff. So like,
okay.
When I do like facilitation, I do it around Lego Series Play. So like people building and actually using their cameras to like show stuff.
Yeah, awesome. So I just put like IRL. I love that. Gamers have a term for this, which is meet space. Anyway, which is just the idea of like physical space, right? Physical space brought on screen. Is what you're talking about to me, is just like you're doing something in the physical world, and then you're also like bringing it into the digital world by holding it up to the screen or showing it to the screen. Yeah. So physical brought on screen. Legos. Cool. Okay. This is quite a list, everyone. So one of the reasons I want to start with this list is just the idea that I think sometimes it's easy to forget that actually like this amount of kind of like options or possibilities is possible. It's really tempting, I think. And like I get stuck in this all the time to just type into the chat, say things out loud. Like those two, and I think you can do incredibly good facilitations with just those two. And like sometimes just knowing that like this list exists, and we can even just like pull inspiration and ideas from just looking at, okay, like what are all the ways we can actually interact with this thing, can be really helpful. So I wanted to start by just saying sometimes just reminding ourselves what's possible and having it in like a clean little list is really helpful. So I will send this to everyone. If you want to take a screenshot of it right now, you can, but I will send it in the follow-up email because I think this is really good to just like remember. And I think that I have now so many questions and like this idea of like, is ignoring participating is, or not like is, but how does it influence participation and how do we see it? I think there's also a lot of questions to go from with this. Observing, watching. I think the only one I had that we didn't write down was listening, which I would say, like, to me feels just like a different way to describe observing perhaps, but I think we discount it as like an active thing sometimes. Yes, Dan, did you want to chime in with something?
Just one other, there's this sort of behavior of people who either are offering to take notes or who like provide resources. Like there's a passing topic and then someone will like put the link in chat unrequested, you know, it's just sort of that support team kind of vibe.
Yeah. And sometimes, you know, for me, I'm almost always facilitating by myself. And sometimes that's just from the commons, like that's just from the group that someone will take on that role. So yeah, I think that does feel really different than just the different type of typing into the chat, but just that idea of like background notes or even like putting things in there. Yeah, love that. Okay. All right. I'm going to remove my spotlight and bring us back here. So okay, so now that we've talked about ways to participate, what I'm going to move us into now is thinking about ways that we influence participation as facilitators. So what are the ways that we can influence participation as facilitators? So I want to do this a little bit differently than just making a list. And this is why I asked if you could get a piece of paper, that would be really helpful, because what we're going to do is we're going to make a mind map. So if you've never made a mind map before, you kind of start with a central idea right at the middle. And our central idea is just going to be ways we can influence participation. And then you kind of make a bunch of branches from there. So I'm going to show you my mind map without showing you the mind map. So if I were going to do a mind map on food, let me spotlight myself so you can see this a little bit better. If we're going to do a mind map on food, you might say food, that's our central concept. Then you might say fruit. Oh my gosh, fruit, rice. I don't know what this was supposed to be. Berries, right? You want to kind of branch out. I'm going to be thinking about this while you're doing it. You want to kind of make as many branches as possible. And what I will encourage while you're thinking of these mind maps is really to think about getting varied at this level, at this kind of one level out, rather than going really specific into like strawberries, blackberries, right? Like kind of stay at the like one level or second level out for this initial kind of mind mapping. So the question again is, what are the different ways we can influence participation as facilitators? So the middle of your mind map is, how can we influence participation? And we're going to be, again, thinking about this on Zoom or on virtual, right? So we're just thinking, so if you're like room setup, how does that apply to virtual? I'm going to encourage you to think just virtual. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes for this mind map, and then we're going to kind of debrief and chat about them in breakout rooms. Okay, so encourage you to just turn your camera off so that you can kind of draw and not worry about what you look like, your thinking face looks like. So go ahead and turn your camera off. And then after 3 minutes, I'll bring you back on and we'll move into kind of debriefing our mind maps. Okay. Okay, yes, please come back on camera if you were on camera before. All right, great. Okay, so I'm going to put you into breakout rooms of 3 or 4 people. And what I'd like you to do in those rooms, beyond, you know, being like, hey, how's it going? I'm blank, blank, blank. You can totally do that. But then what I would love you to do is have a conversation where instead of being like, okay, so this is my mind map and I did these 10 things, like just because of time, I will encourage you to resist that part and to instead kind of move into the 2 questions I'm going to put in the chat. So what jumped out to you about your mind map? What did you find interesting? What things were you like, oh, I hadn't thought about that, but that's really true. And then what insights might you have to share on this idea of like, what pieces of this feel really like, man, if that isn't there, like it just doesn't work. Like, or I think that's like a really essential part of getting participation or like really setting yourself up or the group up for success. So encourage you to spend most of your time in your breakout rooms on those two questions. I'm going to give you about less than 10, more than 5 minutes in your breakout rooms for that conversation. Definitely hear from everybody. So if you're somebody who can talk, just be mindful. We're all probably people who can talk, so just be mindful. And I'll give you a 2-minute warning when we're ready to come back. If you see me pop into your breakout room, it's not because you've done anything wrong. I just got bored. And so I'm just coming to be a fly on the wall. Okay. Any questions before I send you off?
Can you repeat the instructions again of what we're doing?
Yep. So in the chat, you'll also see this. Basically, have a debrief about what jumped out to you about your mind map and what pieces feel really foundational to like good facilitation. And resist just listing your mind map for each other. Okay. If it gets awkward, person with the name earliest in the alphabet, you are the unofficial facilitator and your job is to make it less awkward. Okay. Okay. You won't need it. You're all great. And I'll see you in a few minutes. If you got cut off, because many of you went right to time, feel free to finish your thought in the chat. We won't know what you're saying, but your group will be like, yes, and that'll be great. Okay, so few minutes for a quick debrief. I am particularly curious about that second question of what on your mind map or what kind of in your conversation kind of jumped out to you as like a foundational piece of facilitation. Would anybody be up for speaking to that? And I would love to hear people who haven't shared in the large group want to give you a moment to jump in first. Anybody up for it? Sharon, what came up with your group?
I can share.
Yes. Okay.
So Sheena had a great comment. I'm sure that she can share as well about having a lot of energy as a foundational piece. That's really big. That's hard for me as an introvert, but I find that my foundation is just really purposeful planning. I think if I have a facilitation that goes poorly, I tend to go back and think, what did I do to plan it to be incorrect or something like that. So for me, it was purposeful planning.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Great. Anyone else? Things that came up in your conversation or jumped out to you? I see Janine and then maybe Chris. Yeah, go ahead, Janine.
So in our group, one of the things that I shared was the topic of polling for preferred participation type. And we had a really good discussion around that. And I thought we did really well discussing. We talked about psychological safety and balancing the activities across our participants who are introvert and extrovert as well, kind of finding ways to incorporate activities that fit both instead of just being our extroverted selves and doing extroverted activities only kind of thing, which if you're the extroverted trainer, is easy to do. We talked about that in kind of great detail, and that was something that we had really great conversation around. And one of the other things we talked about was giving time and space for conversation for them to participate in that way, just as we were in the room at the time. So that was another great highlight for us.
Nice, great. I think kind of what you were saying, and like sometimes that introvert extrovert co-facilitation is super powerful because somebody can be like, I would hate that, and somebody else can be like, I would love that, and it will like balance out, right, the like knowledge or the kind of like propensities that everybody is bringing to that space. Chris, do you have a different thought?
Well, no, actually, I was in the same group as Janine and Phil, but I just wanted to add, there's some really great discussion that we had there. And I think the meta theme that came out of that discussion, for me at least, was that concept again of that psychological safety, whether it is the extrovert introvert thing. I shared an example of if you're dealing in corporate environments where you have team members who are at different levels, a superior who may be at the same table as you. So leveling the playing field to invite participation. So just different ways in which you can create that safety net for people to feel as though they can share meaningfully.
Yeah. 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 So important. And I think that, I often say like we could do a whole workshop, and as I'm saying at this time, I'm like, but maybe we should do a whole workshop on like even the like really technical things that you do to create psychological safety. Because I think psychological safety can often feel like this, like, oh yeah, we should do that big abstract concept, right? And versus like, well, actually, I think like group size really matters. And I think like level of vulnerability of the question really matters. And just like getting into like what creates psychological safety. So yeah, I'm really curious. Or like that's what's kind of knocking around in my brain right now. So maybe we'll do that in the future. Okay. I'm going to take us into a little bit into the, well, in a moment, I want to go into what Chris is talking about of like the meta. You were like, we were doing a thing in the thing. So like we could talk about those insights, get in some meta insights. I want to do one quick exercise before that, because we've got so much knowledge in this room. This room is full of people who do this all the time. And so here's what I would love to do. I'm calling this exercise one sentence wisdom. So I would like you to pick one part of your mind map that you feel like I've got one sentence of good wisdom around how to do that, or like something that works to like related to that particular thing. So it could be like, I did this earlier, so room setup, like what's a tip or an insight you would have on room setup? Or if you're talking about like energy, what's a tip or an insight you would have around energy? So I want you to open up the chat, and I'm going to give you 1 minute to type one sentence of wisdom around something in your mind map or something that came up in your conversation. So take 1 minute and give us a little nugget of knowledge coming from your facilitation experiences. All right, I'm going to give you another 10 seconds. Cool. Oh, such a range of information in here. It's great. Some of you really were like, one sentence can be 3 sentences, and good for you. Okay, you're like, if I type fast, it doesn't count. Okay, so just know that I will also send this out in the follow-up so that we can all check it out, because I'm not going to give you time right now to read it all, because we're together, and so we're going to do the things we can do together, and we'll read those after. So I want to take us a little bit into the meta. So we've been talking about facilitation, but the whole time you've been being facilitated. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to put you into breakout rooms with one other person. We have a perfect number, and I'm very excited about that. And each of you is going to have 1 minute to just say or kind of reflect on like, what is something that you think you can learn from the workshop itself? What's something that we can learn about kind of like foundational facilitation skills from the workshop itself? And just have a moment to chat that out with one other person.
This workshop.
This workshop or in general?
This workshop. The last 53 minutes, you have all been in a workshop. And so now we're going to take the next 5 to process that workshop. Because if facilitating about facilitation isn't enough, we're going 1 level up. Okay? All right, so it's, you've been participants, it's facilitator hat time. So that's the headspace you're going into now, is like, what can you learn as a facilitator from this facilitation? Okay. Going to give you 2 minutes in your breakout rooms, and then we'll come on back and we'll close it all out. Okay. I love you all were people who said not all the way to the countdown. Like you were like 2 seconds left. No.
I needed more time with my partner.
We always need more time with our partners. Okay, so that's actually a really nice segue, Chris. So something that happens in these workshops is that people come and they're like, this person's awesome. And then you're like, okay, I'll never see you again. Bye. So let's change that if we want to. Okay, because sometimes it's nice to be like, I'll never see you again. Bye. Right. Like sometimes that's nice. Like virtual has benefits where it's like, and I'm done and I'm home. Right. Like if it's got pros and cons, but we can change the I'll never see you again thing if we want to. So here's an invitation. If you have a LinkedIn, an Instagram, a Twitter, I would encourage you to choose the platform that you actually like being on, and you want to grab your social thing and put it in the chat and say, hey, people, come find me there. I do things. I would love to connect with you. Go ahead and do that. Put it in the chat, and then people will. If they can. Yes, great. Links is the way to go, or we'll copy it and we'll send it out. It'll only go to the people who registered. And if you're like, oh, please don't share that with like anybody not in the room, then just let me know and I won't. But if you throw it in there, it's going to go in the follow-up email with just all the other information. Cool. Okay. Because sometimes I meet people and I'm like, you seem really awesome. I want to like know you, or just like at least see what you post on Instagram and, get to know your dog. And that's a nice way to do it. Okay, cool. All right. Great offer. Okay. Oh, we have 1 minute left now. I talked too long. All right. So we're going to end on time. So here's what I'm going to say. I think the magic of facilitation is when something happens that couldn't have happened without the people in the room. Whether that's your small group conversation, whether that's large group conversation, something happens that couldn't have happened in your brain. And I hope that happened today. And I hope you learned something that can kind of like further your practice towards making that happen for other people. That's my goal and my hope, and really why I believe in the like magic and power of facilitation. Okay, yes. So we've got a lot of ideas now of like more ways we can explore this question of the foundations of facilitation. If you want to make a contribution to our scholarship as a thank you for this event, I'm going to put that link in the chat. All of our donations this month get doubled, which is awesome, and you can do that. If you want to stick around for more questions, conversation, feel free to do that. We'll have about 5-10 minutes to chat. Otherwise, we're going to sign off right now in my way that I like to do it, which is I'd ask everybody to unmute and we're all going to say bye together, and then you can leave. Okay. All right. So unmute. 3, 2, 1. Bye. Bye. Bye, everyone. Thanks for coming. Good to see you all. Okay. Are you here on purpose, or if you haven't found the button yet?
I'm here on purpose.
All right, Jason. Are you sticking around with a question?
Not really. Well, the only question I have for you is personal. And where in Vermont are you now?
I'm in Barrie.
Barrie, okay.
Central Vermont.
Yeah.
If you know where Barrie is, you know Vermont. So
yeah, my dad used to live in Brattleboro, and so
okay.
I love
close to me.
Vermont.
Yes. Yeah. Hunter's down in New Hampshire, right?
In Keene.
In Keene. Yep. Wonderful. Is anyone sticking around with questions or just stick around for more conversation? Yes, Hunter.
I have a question. So as you were speaking to the difference between teaching, lecturing, facilitating, I'm curious if you ever use that within your framing of a workshop. Yeah.
To participants or to
Yes.
like people I'm teaching facilitation to?
To participants.
I wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't. But I also haven't taught in a long time just pure content. But I will say one way that I use it is I prepare people for participation, especially if they are expecting a lecture, right? Because so often people come on Zoom and they're just like, oh my God, what do you mean I need to like do things, right? Like I was just ready to like sit and get information.
Yes.
So I will in that way say like, hey, this is a participatory session. You're going to be interacting with each other. There will be breakout rooms, whatever it is. And so I'll kind of like let them know this is not a lecture, to preload that and make sure that they're on the same page, especially if that's the norm for what they're expecting.
Yeah, that's what I've been running into in different things I've been doing where folks are just expecting to show up and then I give them information where I'm like, oh, no, they're having a conversation actually.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the things I wrote in my mind map is pre-work. Someone put that in their one sentence knowledge as well. And I think even pre-work often feels like they have to do stuff beforehand, but sometimes just properly preparing people for what they'll walk into. I'll liken it to in person, people will walk into a lecture hall or they'll walk into a circle of chairs. And as soon as they walk into the circle of chairs, they're like, I know what's happening. I don't like it, but I know, right? And we can't do that on Zoom in the same way. And so to me, we have to be more explicit on Zoom and say like, this is the equivalent of a circle of chairs type of workshop. It's not a lecture hall type of workshop, right? Because sometimes the word workshop to us means lots of things, but to them it means nothing. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. Chris and Dan, you just sticking around or you got a question?
Dan can go if he wants to go.
Okay. As I was actually saying to Hunter earlier, that I've done a fair amount of sort of like client consulting work, and I never learned to do good facilitation. I mean, sadly, and I'm comfortable with the part where I know what I want to get from the meeting, or but I think I've used so much of like expert request kind of vibe instead of other tools, and I'm kind of sick of expert request experience. And so I'm what are the resources that you can think of that would be good ways to, and maybe it's one of your workshops right there.
It's these. No, it's these. So okay. I didn't get into it. These and if you want to learn, if you're like, but I need more practice on how to use them, then we've done a couple of intensives where basically we'll spend a whole day together kind of going through like, okay, this is the foundations of facilitation. These are the ways we can think about things as facilitators, group size, props, kind of pulling those levers that I was talking about. And then we really spend, half the time practicing with facilitator cards. So that type of like intensive is what I'd recommend when we announce one. That's what I would recommend jumping into. Have you come to Card Sharks, Dan?
No.
Okay, Card Sharks is next week and it's totally free with your deck.
Okay.
So Card Sharks, and you should have gotten an email about it today. If you didn't, just let me know. You did. Okay, cool. So Card Sharks is like a 1 hour where we start practicing with the cards, start thinking through how to use them, and then we get some practice time. And I think that might unlock some new ways to interact with it.
Yeah.
So I would say come to Card Sharks.
Okay. What about one other thing I can think of is like, I was reading like Brene Brown, Dare to Lead, and she talks about like container making kind of, and are there things that you think of as sort of like primary guidance material when it comes to that type of thing, sort of making, declaring space kind of?
There's a book called Art of Gathering, The Art of Gathering. And she talks a lot about kind of like creating that container. And I think it's a really good, to me, it's like a good foundational text. And it's also a good reminder text, like, oh yeah, that is really important. And so I think it came out quite a few years ago. It's not particularly like, it doesn't say like, this is how you do it on Zoom, but it's still kind of got that foundations of like, how do we create the container? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yep. That would be one I would go to. Okay. Chris, go ahead.
I just wanted to say thank you for hosting this event, this get together. I think one of the challenges for me has been I've spent so much of my work history doing in-person facilitations, which is really easy to get engagement, right? The energy is very infectious, and so just the idea of having more showmanship, showpersonship, kind of infects the other people to also contribute in that way. And what I found doing the online piece is that that energy is just not, the energy level is just not there.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciated this conversation, but I'm curious to know, are there, like for you especially, are there certain tools or platforms, and I've used Zoom before, but are there different tools that you have found really kind of help with that level of engagement? Because people are, they may not be tech savvy. And so are there simple things? And I think we've done some things with Butter in the past.
Peekaboo is a weirdly high energy thing. Like it really does get people going like, oh my God, there's a, because it's so novel. So like, I wouldn't even underestimate the power of doing something like Peekaboo before a breakout room or Peekaboo before something else, like just as a way to get people like, oh, this is interesting. I'm paying attention. I'm not looking at my other screen or my phone right now because I can't. I have to like actively be here. So that would be one thing, is like, don't underestimate the power of those types of things. I still use a lot of the principles that I would use in person, which is like low energy means, to me, low energy, one of the ways to solve that is to decrease the group size. I think that full group is so hard on Zoom. And so as soon as you decrease the group size, like people won't abandon one person. They won't just not talk, but they won't feel any obligation around that for a large group. They'll be like, someone else is going to talk, right? So if you put them in a pair breakout room or triad breakout room, they will say things, and that will bring more, even if the energy dies when they come back, at least in the breakout room, there was something happening. And I think if you set them up well for giving them specific instructions, making them not too long, letting them know like person with the longest hair goes first, like those types of things that are really simple to set people up for success, have a good breakout room experience, and then just debrief with a few people in the large group. I think that can be really powerful. We did like 8 things today, which was probably too many. I'll ask you, I could let you know better than I do how fast that workshop felt, or how much of a sprint, but like, I don't assume the energy will be high. I kind of require people to participate, like, and I don't say that to them. I just kind of do it in the structures. You know what I mean? Like, okay, you're going to write this thing, then you're going to put it here, then you're going to chat about it. Right. Like, and that invitation, people are like, okay, I mean, I can write something down. Okay. I can share one thing in the chat. Okay. You know, like that kind of just walking them through the like escalator versus like, what do people think? I never ask questions out loud in the group, almost ever, that haven't been primed in some way beforehand. So that is like, I just expect people to not be paying attention and then figure out how to continuously be like, nope, like bring it back, you know? And I think some people wait for people's attention to drift. And I think in person, that's okay. I think online it's not, or it's okay to do, but you're gonna lose them. There's just too many possibilities. So
okay. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that.
I really feel like the webinar life has killed the VILT.
Yeah.
I mean, I really do feel that so many people come into the virtual space when we are there facilitating in the virtual instructor-led training world, used to being able to just be in the background, behind the camera, behind nothing, if you will, in a webinar where all they have to do is kind of listen and walk around.
Yeah.
And I think I think so many people come to our virtual sessions like that, really in the webinar brain, as opposed to, let me sit down in front of this other human who's really directly facilitating with me and trying to engage me. And they're like, this is like a webinar or whatever. I wrote that down myself. Did the webinar kill the VILT show? I don't know. It's just been a frustrating time.
I think though, I would say like it's an extra hurdle, but I think it is overcomeable.
I agree with that, but I think first it feels like a death.
Yeah.
A little bit. And then
I think you
work to overcome it.
Yeah. Me and Hunter both have done a lot of social justice work. And to me, it's a similar, like, there's a lot of bad social justice experiences that we're up against, right? People come in and they're like, you're going to yell at me. You're going to like make me feel like, you know, whatever. And we have to be like, no, we're not, you know, like, or we have to be like, actually, like, this is a place to learn. It's okay to not know this, whatever it is. Like, at least that's always been my approach. Right. And so we're up against, it's never neutral. You know what I mean? Like most people weren't like, I loved school. I loved classrooms. I felt so successful, you know, like very few people have that experience, but I agree with you that it's another level on virtual. But I do think that it's not something we all haven't encountered before. It's just a new form. And they get off the hook in a different way online.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree. I thought the session was amazing. I've had my cards for a while. And I'm going to try to join one of the card sharks so I can kind of do what Don has said, so I can kind of really get in and get the practice and, you know, find more ways to use them virtually. I'm really excited about that thought.
Yeah.
But this has just been really good. I was telling Chris and everyone in our group, or maybe it might have been one of the other participants actually, that the list of the participating and all of it has really been a great refresher for me, because I facilitate often and you can kind of get in a bit of a rut.
Yep.
So I needed this today. It was good.
That's honestly, this session was also part of me being like, you know what I never do? I never do strike a pose. Like we used like, maybe it was that card mainly, that card and mind mapping. I don't tend to do those. And so I was like, you know what? I need to stretch. I need to like see, can we explore facilitation, something I'm really comfortable with, using some methods that I haven't used before. And so with Card Sharks, one thing we'll do is we'll do this sort of like, which cards do you know, which cards do you not know? And another way you can use your deck is to sort it into what cards do I always use and which ones do I never use, right? And so that like getting out of a rut can be like, to me, like, that's why I go back to facilitator cards. Like I've had some version of these for like 4 or 5 years, you know, like I've had these ones for over 1.5 years and I still use them. And that's because like, otherwise I get complacent and I'm just we're going to do minute papers. We're going to do fishbowl. We're going to do debrief, you know, and so that's another, like, that's really why I do it. And I can I'll send it to you in the follow-up email. Like these are the 7 cards we did. That can also be helpful.
That's what I was going to ask. Thank you.
Yes. That would be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I have to hop off, sadly, people, but it's been great to meet you and see you all. And we have another event next week, Card Sharks. There's another event coming up tomorrow, which I did not mention. But if you want to come, I'm going to throw it in the chat right now before I sign off. We're just going to do more facilitator cards. So you don't need the cards to come, unlike next week. Need cards to come next week. Tomorrow, you do not need, if you're just like, I just want to see more things online and be a participant again. We're going to do a couple of things tomorrow. We're going to do 100 ideas. What's the MVP and analogies? Those are the cards we're going to do tomorrow.
Okay.
So anyone can come. All of you are invited. Hopefully we'll see you around the internet.
Thanks so much.
Excellent. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.
Take care.